Listen up, you unwashed genitalia. Do you want content? Internet content? Well, I've got you sorted out right here, me old mucker, because I've got the internetiest content you could ever hope for right here on the Jimquisition. What am I talking about? I'm talking about a top 10 list, of course. You don't get much internety than that. We are doing a top 10 list on the 10 worst types of DLC, not individual DLC. And when I say types, I'm talking about substantial DLC, stuff we would look at and say, that's DLC, before we would look at it and say, that's a microtransaction or that's a loot box. Because, as with all proper internet content, well, this has got sequel potential, doesn't it? You can do top 10 lists about anything. Top 10 boglins that have been in a show about video games. I bet we could pull that off. Not right now because I just came up with it, but we got 1, 2, 3, 4 right there. Easy list. I love top 10s. Ever since online functionality became the norm for video games, so-called AAA publishers have realised they don't need to finish their products by launch day and have contented themselves with rushing out games to meet investor expectations before patching them up later whenever they can be bothered, if they can be bothered. Hello Arkham Origins. While this is great for keeping shareholders satiated and ensuring your games hit important dates, it doesn't generate additional money for publishers, so they naturally had to take this whole idea to the extreme. Most famously, Asura's Wrath saw Capcom charge players an astounding $7.99 to obtain the quote-unquote real ending of the game. Yes, Capcom had the unrestrained gall to charge $60 for a relatively short single-player game and add an $8 fee to finish it. Asura's Wrath launched around the time the industry was on a full-scale offensive against the used game market, and few publishers were as aggressive about it as Capcom, with Asura's Wrath's DLC seen by some as the company's latest attempt to claw some cash from second-hand purchasers. Of course, it had the added benefit of clawing cash from everyone at the same time, and it was frankly an underhanded scumbag tactic. Asura's Real Ending DLC is notorious, but it wasn't the first example of its kind. Ubisoft pulled a similar move for its quasi-forgotten 2008 Prince of Persia game, issuing an epilogue chapter that, by many accounts, wasn't worth the price to begin with, and never even made it to the PC version for business reasons. PC customers, shockingly, found that snub just a tiny bit insulting.
Oh, Ubisoft!
Anybody who crafts this sort of content is a fucking charlatan, plain and simple. Some of you might not know this, but back in the day, things like additional in-game currency, big head mode, unlockable costumes, god mode, level select, they were all in video games, either accessed as completion rewards or through secret cheat codes. Of course, the moment publishers realised they could charge money for such things, this all changed. One early example is Skate 2's Time is Money pack, which literally unlocked all the game's content and effectively eliminated all in-game progress for a fee. Meanwhile, Namco Bandai went to town with the concept, offering in-game gold, level-ups and max HP boosts among many other things in its Tales series. In fact, Namco was giving us some of our earliest tastes of microtransactions in premium games way back in 2008, with level-ups and in-game gold all sold at a premium. Capcom wasn't even subtle about it, quite literally bringing back concepts like God Mode and Big Head Mode for Dead Rising 2 Off the Record's Game Breaker pack. This sort of DLC reminds us that games were once complete packages, that the game you paid for was the game you got, and that nowadays the game you pay for is the game that advertises additional things to buy. Plus, making you pay to devalue your game by breaking it with cheats that circumvent the whole gameplay experience, it's like paying a house cleaner an extra $10 to shit on your carpet. Fuck, I hate video games. I think we all saw this one coming. Among the most universally reviled DLC practices is the on-disc DLC. That is, content that's already on the disc when you buy it. Both the aforementioned Capcom and Namco Bandai were huge fans of this practice, shipping games such as Dragon's Dogma, Resident Evil 5, Soul Calibur, Beautiful Katamari, and, fittingly, Street Fighter X Tekken with paywalled content already included. The main issue with this kind of content is false advertising. You're not actually buying downloadable content, you're buying a key for content that's already in the game. Now this practice hasn't really stopped, at least not in spirit, especially with microtransactions becoming normalised, but the very idea of it still inflames passionate disgust among many people for good reason. There remain justifications about how it saves time and resources for developers, but no reason stops such DLC from being a deliberately mislabelled con job. Plus, I don't much care about your time and resources when you're talking about making extra money on top of what you're already charging people. In fact, I don't give a fuck about it. Perhaps worse than on-disc DLC is in-game DLC, and by that I mean content that is not just included in the product, but is visibly baked into the gameplay experience with an eye toward coaxing more money from players with a dangly carrot approach. One of the most notorious examples of this can be found in Tiger Woods' PGA Tour 13, which gated off 14 of its courses behind an unreasonable amount of grinding, and was all too happy to remind fans up front they could just buy the in-game currency with real money in order to unlock it. More notoriously, of course, was the thoroughly mocked DLC incident in Dragon Age Origins, where an NPC would actually come and talk to you about a quest that, oh, you had to buy first. EA would do this again on another level in Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning, do you remember that one? In order to advertise its online pass for its offline game, including a questline within the game, but barring players from reaching its destination unless they'd activated or purchased a code. Oh, and because Capcom loves its abusive DLC, Dragon's Dogma used a little subtle one with text boxes that intermittently told players during the game that DLC was available. Mayhaps the first case of pop-up ads in a AAA game. Pre-order stunts are some desperate, thirsty bullshit, and it seems no amount of dignity is too much to flush down the toilet in a grasping bid to get you spending money months before the games come out. The quickest and simplest concept publishers glommed onto was and still is pre-order DLC, in-game content that you can only obtain if you reserve a copy of something that doesn't in a million years need fucking reserving. This is a good old-fashioned ransom, demanding you pay the money now if you want all the game has to offer, and this can range from cosmetic items like skins to full-on playable characters like in Transformers War for Cybertron. Even worse is that a lot of this stuff is made to be retailer exclusive. For example, the aforementioned War for Cybertron offered Jazz, Shockwave and Demolisher as pre-order bonuses, but only if you ordered the game from specific retailers, and even then, each exclusive retailer could only offer one character. Jazz was exclusive to Best Buy, Shockwave to GameStop, and Demolisher to Amazon. There is absolutely zero customer-facing benefit to this setup, it's specifically only there to help the retailers and maybe to get the truly hardcore fans buying multiple copies of the game. Many titles have pulled the retailer exclusive stunt, and they're all the more slimy for doing so, especially, as in Cybertron's case, when the publisher quietly dumps all the content up for sale to everyone many months later. It's the kind of unrepentant scam, and I'm gonna say scam, that should actually be examined by an authority somewhere. Selling content that used to conceptually be part of a basic experience, like glorified cheat codes, is one thing. Selling content that quite literally was part of the game experience and is noticeably absent in a sequel, now that's another entirely more egregious bloody thing. Several game sequels have been stripped down and threadbare in comparison to their predecessors, only to have the publisher sell the missing items later for a tidy extra fee. Maybe the most jaw-dropping example of this was The Sims 4, which was fucking barren when compared to The Sims 3, missing key features and ultimately feeling like a shell of its former self. Many cynically accused EA of carving stuff out of the Sims series in order to make more money, and sorry, did I say cynically? I meant correctly. The Sims 3's creator style was ripped out because EA figured you'd spend more money if you had less freedom to make your own stuff, and the game overall had remarkably fewer options and models than the previous game. Over time, the penny-pinching prick-ends over at Electronic Arts would add in a bunch of stuff that had been taken out, but with one big, juicy, wet caveat: you had to give EA more money. This was an amazing overreach on EA's part, a DLC that quite specifically didn't add value to the product because it was stuff that had been brutally and glaringly sliced out. And while The Sims 4 remains the more disgusting example, it's not the only one, and players have to constantly be on the lookout for sequels that have had items taken away rather than added in thanks to DLC. Oh hello again, The Sims 4. You know, in the age of microtransactions and glorified gambling mechanics, it's difficult for good old traditional downloadable content to turn heads anymore, but if there's one thing you can count on Electronic Arts for, it's turning heads for the most despicable of reasons. With EA's indefensible sham of Sims 4 already drowning in pack after pack and expansion after expansion, it's extra jaw-dropping that EA used it to become an unintentional parody of AAA games as a whole. The Sims 4, if you didn't already know, is so jam-packed with DLC, it has DLC for its DLC. To date, The Sims 4 has 4 expansion packs, 6 game packs, and 14 stuff packs. The latest stuff pack has been released purely for those who have already bought the Cats and Dogs expansion pack, and good lord, this avaricious sleazy industry has made me hate the word pack. Really though, there's no finer nutshell example of how far the games industry has sank than DLC for DLC. Now, this is more the domain of microtransactions than traditional substantial DLC, but there is some DLC that fits in with this, and any premium feature that fucks with the multiplayer experience to give inherent advantages to purchasers has been quite genuinely designed by sentient piles of shit wearing human skin. A staple of the free-to-play market, an inexcusable number of premium games have fallen prey to the temptation of conniving additional cash from their audience in exchange for superior firepower. At the most notorious end of this spectrum is obviously Star Wars Battlefront 2, a game that initially tied its entire progression system to a real money-fueled gambling system, but EA has been pulling this shit for a long time. The Ultimate Shortcut bundle for Battlefield 4 worked in a similar fashion to Skate 2's bollocks, in that it unlocked the unlockables for you up front. The major difference was that this was multiplayer, allowing those with more money than sense to instantly have an edge over their competition, all of the edge, without even having to play anything, and naturally they made acquiring said edge through gameplay a grinding chore. It's because of shit like this that grinding in even action-oriented games became so much more of a thing. PR mouthpieces would continue to say they were merely offering player choice, but failed to note how they messed around with progression to try and make players impatient or actively punish those who tried to play the game like, you know, a game instead of a fucking DLC catalogue. Goddamn piece of fucking shit. Fucking hate it. Let me just say something I've said before and will say again. Activision Blizzard remastered Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, added microtransactions, and took out the downloadable content. Activision Blizzard then remastered the downloadable content and sold it separately, despite every other remaster being a complete product as a matter of value and basic customer respect. Activision Blizzard not only resold this DLC separately, it jacked up the price of said DLC to boot. Activision Blizzard can fuck itself with a frozen stick of its own shit.
Hit the lever!
I think it's fitting that my list of the worst DLC types ever would end on a type of DLC almost exclusive to Konami, because Konami is Konami and Konami is the worst. At least in terms of the mainstream AAA industry, there are few companies who'd have the cheek, the nerve, the sheer bloody arrogance to charge players $10 for a second bloody save slot, but that's exactly what those fuck ramparts at Konami did with Metal Gear Survive. It's bad enough the game is an ugly, unimaginative, formulaic bastardization of Metal Gear, but to demand an extra tenner just so someone can make a second character, or let another person in the fucking house play their own campaign is beyond pathetic. No, it's seriously fucking pathetic. Seemingly starved for new ways of making money from an increasingly stagnant audience base, the stupid little bastards at Konami desperately contrived this fuck-awful notion. It barely qualifies as downloadable content because there really isn't any content, downloadable or otherwise. realize it's literally just a fucking save slot. Most of us haven't even imagined such a ludicrous concept since the days of physical memory cards. You can't call it a microtransaction. There's certainly nothing micro about forking $10 over for basically nothing. And because you're doing that, I won't even just call it a transaction. That would imply you're getting something for your money. Now, this is just a con. It's you handing a tenner over to Konami and that's basically it. Eat scorpions, you fucking dick squirts. Fuck Konami. The list is over, and it's time for honourable mentions, aka the bits we forgot for the main list and have just remembered at the end. I want to give an honourable mention, a shout out to Launch Day DLC. Do you remember that? Ah yes, I remember Launch Day DLC. Launch Day DLC, remember when that was a big thing? When that was a controversy, when people questioned that? But now every AAA game has DLC available at launch, pretty much. So it's just DLC now, not Launch Day DLC. Although, to be fair, a lot of that sort of wasn't as bad compared to pretty much everything else we talked about. So, I mean, that's what I think. If you disagree, please leave a comment below. If you think we've forgotten anything, please leave a comment below. Please like and subscribe! Ah! And thank God for me.
Everybody's thinking about me.
It's other people are gonna like it.